Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Geisel, self-mastery coach and mentor. The mission of Evolve Beyond Limits is simple. Fall in love with your life and change the world in the process. And each episode of this podcast is dedicated to helping you do just that. It's designed to bring you one step closer to an aha moment that could completely transform your life so that you can keep evolving into your fullest potential. The reality is how you show up in the world matters, and I don't want you to waste another second living a life that doesn't light your soul on fire. So let's have some fun. Welcome back to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Geisel, and we are into week 5 of our 7-week series on all the different chakras, the different energy centers in our body. So this week we are diving into the throat chakra. So this is our 5th chakra, and if you can imagine, the location is right in the middle of your throat. Now, the throat is all about listening to God's will and speaking your truth. Now, something that's really important as we get into the throat that I want to put out there is that there is a difference between speaking to be heard and speaking your truth. So we have to keep that in mind as we go through this podcast. There is a difference between speaking to simply be heard, which is what a lot of people are going around doing, and speaking your truth or speaking with purpose and integrity. Now, when we think about the throat, it's all about communication. But as much as it's about speaking, it's also about listening and realizing that with communication comes in all forms. It is not just about our speech. We really communicate through sound, through rhythm, through vibration. And all of those things are what actually creates the words that are coming out of our mouth. So when you think about communication, we also communicate chemically and electrically and like all these different ways that our body is communicating with all of the pieces within it to do certain things. Our words are connecting us to people, and we have these constant communication between not just ourselves, but everything on the planet. We're communicating with everything all the time. And it's really interesting because communication is what shapes our reality. Communication is what shapes our future. When you say that you want something, it's the first step to creating it, right? So if you say that you don't want somebody by you, you're actually you tell them that, you're creating a version of the future where that person is not with you any longer. Right? When you want something in your life, the first step to creating it is to communicate what you want. That's why we're always talking about share your goals or your dreams and your aspirations with other people. Write them down, communicate it, put that vibration out into the world in some way. Because that's how we get what we want. And this is where we tend to have a really hard time as a society because we start to realize that people can't read our minds. And if there's something that you want in your life or don't want in your life, then you have to ask for it. You have to communicate it, or else it's not going any further than you thinking it. So this whole 5th chakra is really about communication. And it's the smallest part of our body when you think about our throat. So all of the lower chakra energy has to come through it. All of the upper chakra energy has to come through it. And it's where we start to learn that less is truly more. So there's 2 main points when it comes to the 5th chakra. 1 is speaking with integrity. 2 is the clarity of listening, which is listening with a sense of openness and a sense of softness. People think they listen, but they're not listening to what is actually being said. They listen to what they want to hear. They pick out pieces that fit their narrative, that keep in alignment with the story that they're telling. They listen not to understand. but to figure out where they can prove you wrong or prove themselves right. And all of that goes back to a confidence issue in the third chakra. So when we think about communication, a beautiful aspect of this is this word, which is resonance, which is essentially when two waves of similar frequency come together, they generate more energy and they start to resonate on the same wavelength. And when you think about this, unless people are on the same wavelength, then we're really not communicating. You're not getting anywhere. Communication can't truly occur until people stop reacting to one another and start resonating with one another. We've all been in this place. And if people are on two completely different wavelengths, how difficult is it to have a conversation? If one person is attempting to respond while the other person is simply in a place of reacting, you're on different ends of the spectrum. And unless the other person starts to resonate at that higher frequency and stops being in reaction defensive mode and starts to respond and truly listen, right? Then no communication is really happening. Two people are talking, probably in circles, but nobody's listening and there's no solutions that are coming through. So when we think about this, we also have to think about the fact that we have to have compassion when we communicate with one another. And we also have to be willing to be open to someone else's point of view, or else it's going to be impossible to truly communicate. This is why that connection between the heart and the throat is so important. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that everybody else says or agree with something at all, but you can understand it. You can ask enough questions that maybe you can see where that person is coming from. And then no matter what, you can love that person anyway, even if you don't agree with any of the things that they say. It's interesting, this communication piece, right? Like this is a huge piece of the fifth chakra. And also, you can see why we struggle with this in our world. So, the animal of the fifth chakra is the white elephant, and it's a smaller elephant than the one in the first. The root is the elephant is bigger. It's about taking your stance in the world. Okay. The white elephant, the white part symbolizes that you have purified the illusions and your stories that you used to have through your lower chakras, and that you have tamed the ego of the third chakra. You've released the need to prove yourself, and you're okay being smaller, quote unquote, if that is your destiny. So it's a really beautiful thing. So the developmental age of this chakra is really the teenage years. So teens mouth off because they're developing their individuality and they're developing how they express themselves. If teens feel honored and feel heard, they're actually not as likely to mouth off as a child who doesn't feel like anything that they say matters, or that they're not being heard, or that nobody's listening, or they don't have a safe, open place to speak their truth. So that's pretty interesting too when you think about teenagers compared to, and like what starts to happen around this developmental stage. So as we start to work our way through the fifth chakra, we notice more subtle messages that are constantly communicating and vibrating to us. You start to become more aware of not only what's going on within you, but what's going on around you. You may not know all of the details of what's going on, but you can tell when something is off. And you're just significantly more aware about your words, as well as the vibrational messages that are being sent out to you by other people or things. right? You start to tune in when you get to this chakra and you've really done your work on the other four, four. You start to tune into how you are speaking. And we start to realize that often our tone, the tone that we speak in, can be significantly more damaging than the volume at which we speak. And in that essence, texting is really ruining the throat chakra of our younger generations as well as our older generations because um, there's a lack there of needing and learning how to communicate back and forth and being able to put tone and inflection and all of these different things into what we're saying, right? So lies is what actually blocks our fifth chakra. So any kind of lie, that can be a white lie, that can be a whatever way we want to justify it, but lies is often it's lies that we tell other people, but it's also lies that we tell ourselves. And a big thing that has to do a big physical impact that has to do with our throat chakra is our thyroid. When somebody has thyroid issues, it's a lot of times like energetically it means that that person may be struggling with the truth of who they are. If it's gotten to the point of Hashimoto's, then there's this aspect of energetically that they might just know deep down that they feel very lost in their life. So those are some of the physical things. And what's so important about this fifth chakra, as we go up these chakras, they start to become more and more subtle. And when it's really understanding that what you put out into the world is felt. So people actually start to react to you long before you say anything. Long before you speak anything into the world, people are already they're responding to the vibe that you're putting out. And that vibe is this subtle vibration that you're putting out into the world. And this is part of our communication. So again, our throat and speaking is only a very small piece of the communication puzzle. We are vibrating all the time and we're putting that out into the world all the time. So knowing that how you choose to show up in the world is a big deal. Doesn't matter if you say it or don't say it, right? If you're angry, people can feel it. If you're frustrated, people can feel it. If you are happy and joyful, people can also feel that. If you are faking it, it can also be felt. There's no hiding these subtle vibrations. So it's interesting because one of our biggest outlets right now as far as the throat chakra is media, right? This is how we communicate. This is how there's a lot of expression that comes from the media. And the overall, when you think about the throat chakra, think about the fact that when you go someplace, there's a vibe, right? When you go to a city, there's a vibe. When you go to a country, there's a vibe. When you go to somebody's home, there's a vibe, right? And all of those vibes are the mix of the universal consciousness that is congregated in that area and the universal beliefs that people don't even realize that they're carrying and penetrating out. Okay? So when you think about the media, so much of our universal consciousness is influenced by the media. And we have seen that pretty clearly right now and over the last couple of years. But the reality is, it's always been like that. And as with anything, there's always a polarity to this. There's a positive and a negative that comes through, and we just have to decide how we're going to use it. Right. So, as far as the negative goes, when we have to be cautious because a lot of times the media is portraying their agenda. and what they think, or the powers that be think is important and that we should think is important. That is what is being shown over and over and over again, right? So there's no filter, and you have to be the filter. You have to be able to look at that and say, does that resonate with me or no? Right? Like, you have to learn to filter through the information that is portrayed through the media and decide if it's something that is true for you. Our throat is where we hold our truth, not the truth and what everyone else thinks your truth should be, your truth. And you have to pass it through that filter. It also directs our attention. And where our attention goes, energy flows. So being cautious that if the media is pushing into one direction, again, you got to step back and be the filter, right? Like, are you going to choose to just naturally flow with that energy? If it resonates with you and it feels good and it feels like your truth, okay. But just being cautious about that. And then something I thought that was really interesting, I was reading this book, The Wheel of Life, and they talked about the fact that what are we showing through the media? And one thing that is shown through the media is that violence is okay to see, but sex is not. Isn't that interesting? So we go back and we look at the agenda. We look at what people are showing us is important compared to other things. What is okay compared to what's not okay? And we wonder why there's so many issues in our second chakra and so much shame around our sexuality, because literally every day we're shown that violence is okay. And that is something that is just normal, but sex, that's not something that we talk about, see, or anything. So it's just an interesting concept that I think was brought up. But media also there's this beautiful side to the media, right? Because we can see what is happening in real time and then we can do something about it. If there's a war going on, there's people who are out there creating anti-war movements because they can see what's happening. We can see the state of the earth, and then there's conservation efforts that are put towards it. We can possibly see the devastation that is happening in other countries or even other parts of our country, and we can do something to help. Right? So again, there's a polarity to everything. We just have to decide how we're going to use it. And the key to anything in life, but especially media, is integrity. Are we acting, sharing, communicating, speaking with integrity or not? So every week I've talked to you about like the imbalances, the balanced, and the archetypes. I'm going to go through those with you. So if somebody has an imbalance in their throat chakra, they're going to have a really difficult time expressing themselves, or they're just going to have a very poor way of expressing themselves. Their viewpoints might go from one extreme to the other because they don't really have a sense of their truth. And when we don't have a sense of our truth, we tend to sway back and forth, whatever feels good in that moment, whatever fits our narrative in that moment. Right. So, a few other things that can come from an imbalanced throat chakra is people can be very self righteous. They have this very unfounded belief that they are they are totally correct and they are morally superior to other people. And they really can't see the truth or other people's views at all. An imbalance can go the other way. We always know it can mean that it's not open enough or it's open too much. And if it's open too much, somebody's going to be very, very talkative. They're not going to be able to slow down. They won't be able to stop talking. They will have difficulty expressing and their creativity will be blocked. And there's some people who, when they have a um, very imbalanced throat chakra and it's very open, they may also yell, right? And when you think about the developmental age, if somebody has an imbalance here, they may speak like a 12-year-old. They might be very harsh with their tone. When we talk about imbalances, it could be yelling, but it could be saying nothing at all. Remembering that lies are what blocks our throat chakra. And so they will be telling a lot of lies to themselves and to other people. And all in all, they just feel kind of lost in their life, right? Because when we don't have that sense of truth to hold on to, then we're just going to feel like we're floundering a little bit. Then there's the balance side, okay? So when we think about a balanced throat chakra, um there's going to be very little superficial talking. Like there's going to just be more depth in the conversations that you have with people. They're also going to be very artistically inspired. And that's all types of creativity. And I was sharing with the women in Living Limitless that, like, my version of creativity is through writing and through guided meditations and different things like that. There's all kinds of creativity and ways to express ourselves. So just kind of figuring out what that is for you. They're also very good communicators with less words. People who have a balanced throat chakra they trust in divine timing. They're confident in their purpose of being here. They have a lot of trust in themselves. They have overall just like a way of communicating very well. They listen and they speak very clearly. They don't feel the need to lie. They're truthful. They are very honest with people with a sense of kindness and compassion because the words that they speak are connected to their heart. So, just those are some of the balances. So, now the archetypes that we've talked about each week. The first one, when we're out of balance, is going to be the silent child. And this is going to be the people who are often swallowing their words. They swallow their feelings. They swallow their needs. They don't express themselves. They don't tell other people what they need. They expect them to know. They have a really hard time saying no, or, and they also have, it's the way in which they say no, right? So again, going back to that tone, that integrity, it's okay to say no, right? But how are we going to say it? And people with this silent child also, they're incapable of walking their talk. So you probably notice that there's a lot of double standards with this type of person. They expect one thing, but they don't show that thing. Or it's okay for them to do something, but it's not okay for other people to do something. They really struggled with that integrity piece, integrity with themselves. The other side of this is when it is imbalanced, we have the good communicator, right? This person doesn't feel the need to scream or yell or get a nasty tone with people because how you say things and what you say matters. And you know that. And therefore, you don't have to overdo it. You don't have to scream. Often the loudest person in the room is not the one that people are listening to. So just keeping that in mind, right? The good communicator, the other side of this, doesn't need to yell, right? And their communication style comes from the inner workings of the heart. So again, they don't need to say a lot because what they say matters and it's clear and it's to the point. So as we finish out this throat chakra, I hope that you were able to pull some things from that. But I just like this last aspect. So in Sanskrit, the throat chakra is Visuddha, and that's what it means. And the meaning of Visuddha is purification. I love this because we have to start being more pure with our intentions as a whole, as humanity, because then we can start to really speak and portray our truth and communicate and work through things, right? We can start to speak from the heart with purity, with integrity. And it's just a really beautiful thing. Just keeping that word in mind as you think about this throat chakra purification, purification. So, how do you kind of start to work with this? So, one of the things you can do is mantra meditation. And mantra meditation is simply picking you can look them up. If you want to, shoot me a message and I can help you find some. But it's really about one pointed attention and starting with a mantra, and you just say it over and over and over for a couple minutes a day. And then the whole point of mantra meditation is not simply to just do it in the morning, but you hold it with you all day. And whenever you start to fall out of the present moment, you bring that mantra back. And it's about the vibration, that it is like that vibration that you're speaking, whether it be out loud or in your head, is sending in a vibration through your whole body and through your brain, and it's reworking tons of different things. So this can be a really, really powerful tool for a lot of things. But working on that throat chakra, this can be really powerful. The other thing is that silence is the only way to start to feel those subtle vibrations. So if you're not giving yourself that space to sit in silence, then you're not going to be able to feel those vibrations within yourself, within other people. So just remember, silence is never a bad thing. So giving yourself that opportunity, maybe a couple hours a day, you make it a point to not speak, right? And just see what you start to feel in those times. Because this is less about, again, about speaking and more about feeling the vibrations that are coming at you. So as you go through the rest of this week, just remember that how you show up in the world matters, right? And decide what vibration that you want to put out there. And you might not nail it every time, and that's okay, but have integrity with your actions. One of the things that frightens me the most is the fact that I'll go through a drive through and I'm just a decent person, is what I will say. I mean, I think I'm naturally pretty nice, but like, I have no idea how many comments I have gotten about how nice I am. And the part that freaks me out is that how miserable do people have to be to treat other people so poorly that are helping them, that are giving them something? And so just think again, it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, show up with a vibration that makes people happy, because the reality is that our vibration that we are putting out has the ability to completely transform another person's consciousness if we allow it to. So I say it all the time, but how you show up in the world matters. So show up with integrity, with purity, right? From the heart. If this one's resonating with you, you're like, oh my gosh, like I really hard struggle to communicate my needs, um, to see other people's points of view. I don't know what my truth is. Any of those things, it's natural. It's natural. And this is one that needs a lot of work. And so feel free to reach out. I want to hear your thoughts. We can do some work on this. There's some people who are born with a throat motor and there's some people that aren't. And knowing how to work with that is really, really powerful. So we can start to work through that. So feel free to shoot me a text 248-206-3431, and we'll welcome you into the journal prompt community, as well as just some random voice notes from me to get you thinking and pondering about certain things. You can also just reach me on Instagram, through the website. We can book a session, whatever feels best for you. Just know that you being here means the world to me, and I can't wait to connect with you more. And next week, we will dive into the third eye, the sixth chakra. All right, until next time, let's go change the world.